When it comes to Batman No Man's Land, there's only one way that I can think to describe it. It's just the best. Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. Now we're currently in the middle of the season of events. I'm really enjoying it. I've read some great titles already. I've got some other ones on the horizon. But to me, every company-wide crossover that I read is always going to be compared to Batman No Man's Land. This is my personal gold standard, my favourite, and I think it also might have been my first. So yeah, maybe there's some bias in there. But sometimes it can feel like there's a lot of negativity in the community, so it's just nice to sit down and talk about something that I really love. So kicking this off in 10th place, because this is a top 10 list, it's definitely not a secret top 15. Even though videos with top 10 in the title do better than videos with top 15, so there would actually be a tactical advantage to me doing that, because kicking off this list is Lieutenant Petite and his villain reveal. Now, especially when you enter in something like the Batman universe, there's so many established and well-loved villains that you could already choose from. But what I love about Batman No Man's Land is that they introduced this character that I equally hated and also kind of agreed with. He had a no-nonsense, take-no-prisoners approach, which really meant that he butted heads with Jim Gordon and Batman, and I actually wish that they would have held out a bit longer in making him a full-blown villain, but it was just great to see that Gordon finally had an equal that he could go up against. And as well, with all the gang wars and other storylines that were already going on, the fact that he made such an impression on me, especially at a young age, just says how well he was written. Number 9, we got time with Bruce Wayne while seeing how Gotham copes without Batman. What I find really interesting that Batman No Man's Land did is show us a different way that Bruce is trying to protect Gotham. And there's many different ways that he does it throughout this entire event. I especially love the way that he manipulated Lex Luthor, and an often overlooked thing about No Man's Land is he wasn't afraid to show us him being emotional. Bruce has a lot of things that he could do with talking to somebody about, but what I loved is that it really showed this relationship between him and Alfred. And because Gotham is a thing that he's been fighting for God knows how many years to protect, seeing that crumble and also just be in a worse state than when he initially started just really took its toll on him. Don't get me wrong, yeah, I loved all the Batman stuff in this, but I just loved the way that they also handled Bruce. And I'm just going to take a moment to calm down because I'm thinking about all the other times that I've done these types of videos, and I do get accused of secretly making it a top 15. It's just such a despicable accusation. I don't even know where it comes from, because for that to happen, I would have to have a 15th place. And yeah, with a title that I enjoy as much as Batman No Man's Land, that would be easy, because I'd probably have something like the fact that this was also the inspiration for Batman Arkham Knight and also The Dark Knight Rises. Now yeah, let's be honest, Nolan's third entry into his trilogy is nowhere near as good as the first two, but the one element that I actually really enjoyed was how they adapted No Man's Land. Unfortunately, thanks to Batman Arkham Knight, I got to play around in that city. Yeah, the storyline's not exactly the same, but I think it just speaks to the strength of how good this event is, that even decades later, the movies and the games are still finding ways to incorporate elements of this. But in a way, this event actually one-ups Arkham Knight because you don't spend about 80% of it in the Batmobile. Number 8, I'm going to go with the power struggle within the city. Yeah, I've touched on it already, but I just love how we got to see how exactly Gotham handles this situation and how the villains rise up and who ends up taking control of who and the inner struggles that went on between these teams. And the best thing is that a lot of those struggles were actually side plots, but they were always contributing to the main thing. If this had have just been an event where we're following Batman all the time and seeing exactly how he reacts to it, I think we would have missed out on what makes this event so special. And it also made for some really interesting twists and turns, and seeing stuff like the street demons and the low boys rise up and have an inner war between each other and also make that as engaging as some of the stuff that was happening with Batman should already sort of illustrate why I love this event so much. Number 7, Jim Gordon. Yep, he definitely deserves his own pick, because in a similar way that Batman Year One feels as much of a Gordon story as it does Batman, I also feel the exact same way about No Man's Land. From him making that decision to stay behind when he could have easily evacuated his family, to him kind of holding down the fort on his own whilst Batman wasn't in the picture. And as well, there was a phenomenal storyline early on where he tried to manipulate the street demons into a war with the low boys, and that was so good, just seeing Jim Gordon actually toe the line between what his job lets him do and what he knows is going to succeed, even if, you know, in that instance it kind of backfired. But we got to just see a really different angle to him, but at the same time it really respected who his character is. I don't know, the first time I read this, I think I was about 14, and this left the biggest impact on me when it comes to his character. But yeah, in case you can't tell already, there's so much that I love about this event, and you know, if technically I guess we could call it like a 14th place, I'd probably be putting something like that issue where Batman offers to cut a baby in half. Obviously, yeah, he's referencing an old parable, so he can't really take the full credit for the idea, but I just love the fact that this scene existed. And I'm going to be honest with you, I know it's going to make me sound like a monster, but when I was first reading this, I kind of wanted to see if he'd do it. But why I love this moment so much is because it was showing Batman taking on all types of conflict throughout No Man's Land. He is still the guy that wants to help everyone in Gotham, even if it does mean getting involved in a domestic dispute. And in all honesty, I could probably go for an entire series that's just Batman kind of being a mediator between two people in an argument. But yeah, in case you haven't read this, it should go without saying that he doesn't cut the baby in half, which would have kind of been symbolic because they cut this entire event into 2 omnibuses. And if you haven't picked these up already, you can get them for a little bit cheaper with the discount codes that we've got with the channel sponsor, Organic Price Books. They've got great packaging, fast shipping, and amazing customer services, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get $2 off your order. And if you're ordering 3 or more books and you want them to be delivered together, make sure you use code WOOFWOOF, ship it together for 5% off your entire order. Don't worry, you can just copy and paste them from the description down below, and you can use these codes as many times as you like. Number 6, I'm going with the incorporation of pretty much every major villain, and more so the fact that it was done in a way that felt natural. It never felt like anybody was just forced in there because they had a box to tick. And a lot of these villains had really defining moments, which for somebody like myself when I first read this and I didn't have a lot of Batman knowledge was really important for me. This has possibly one of my favourite Two-Face stories, and it also is a seed for something that pays off in Gotham Central. And especially with having so many different characters in this, I love that it still respected the continuity of what's come before. So you had characters like Bane trying to get revenge for what happened in Nightfall, which just added an extra level of insanity in this already batshit crazy event. No pun intended. You've also got some really integral and defining moments for the Joker, which is difficult to do with a character that's been around for so long and already been tackled a lot of times. And on top of that, you had characters like Lex Luthor just being, well, Lex Luthor. Poison Ivy also got some great moments in this in a way that actually softened her up and made her not look so much like a villain. And there's some surprising inclusions in this that makes you reevaluate how threatening some of his rogues gallery are. Like, who would have thought that Ventriloquist could have rose to power? Number 5, and I'm going with the fact that the build-up was pretty much just as good as the main event. Now, this is speaking from very recent personal experience, but when you decide to read a full event, some of it can be quite a slog. Like, for as much as I loved Infinite Crisis, I wish the main event would have started before the 1000 page mark. Whereas No Man's Land was kicked off with Cataclysm, which is a great Batman story in its own right. It's not one of those things that you just read because you want the context, it's because it's enjoyable. And seeing the political debate that goes on within it, all the actions that are taken before they decide to declare it a No Man's Land, are just as integral to the experience as the main event. In the 2 times that I've read it before, I always make sure that I start at the very beginning, and when I do eventually get to a 3rd reading, I know I'll do the same again, else I'll feel like I'm selling myself short. It's why I feel that if you're picking up these omnibuses, you need to make sure that you get all 3. And if you're in the EU and you're thinking about picking these books up and you want free shipping and free gifts with every order, the only place that you need to know is Comics Bugle. They are Europe's answer to Organic Price Books, and if you use code WOOFWOOF, you'll get 3% off all items that aren't already in a sale. But yeah, this video would be way easier if it actually was a top 15, which I know I'm not doing. I'm sticking with a top 10, but then I could have a 13th place, and I'm just speaking in theory, I'm not actually adding it to the list, but I'd probably put something like, I don't know, Jack Drake being the unappreciated saviour of Gotham. Yeah, this is something that really stuck out with me both times that I read it, but him declaring that Tim Drake was missing was one of the things that really led to the No Man's Land ending. So in a weird way, I kind of also hate him because I wish this thing would have been longer. And yeah, I know that wasn't the only thing that caused the government to take action, but it really put a spotlight on this for the rest of the world, and I can't help but feel that must have persuaded some people to revoke this decision. So Jack Drake, you might have been done dirty in Identity Crisis, but at least No Man's Land gave you a moment to shine, even if nobody really talks about it. Number 4, I'm going with the debut of Cassandra Cain. I love her character, everything about her look, her fighting style, the fact that she doesn't speak, which I know some people wish would be the case with me. Everything about her character just feels iconic, and I love as well what they've done with her since No Man's Land. And sure, yeah, Barbara Gordon's pretty much always going to be the definitive Batgirl, but I feel like Cassandra Cain's an overlooked character, and I just loved all the time that she got in No Man's Land. Actually, you know what? Yeah, Cassandra Cain was great, but in 3rd place, I'm going to put the integration of the entire Bat family. I'm talking Azrael, Catwoman, Robin, Nightwing, even Alfred deserves a shout out because they're all great in No Man's Land. What's best is that they've all got their own storylines going on, but they still overlap, they still make sure that they connect in some way, and sometimes you might just get a scene of Batman and Nightwing working together, but then they'll split up and you can follow their own individual series. It made it so that every single issue that was connected to No Man's Land was important reading, but it never feels like one of those situations where they're just coming in to help Batman. They've all got a vested interest in this thing, and especially especially Huntress. She's one of those characters that I feel goes through a complete journey over the course of this event. So because of that, I feel like whoever you like seeing from the Bat family, if they were around in the 90s, they've pretty much done something that's worth reading in Batman No Man's Land. If you just bear with me for a moment though, I'm trying to think of an honourable mention before we get to number 1. It's one of those things that it's best to have in advance, and there's so many different things that I could highlight. Like, I think I know what it's going to be, but if I could have like a runner-up, or I don't know, if we called it something like a 12th place, I would probably have that one page where we see Batman standing in broad daylight in the snow. This is such an underrated moment, but it's also one of those that's pretty much imprinted on my brain. And that given the situation, being out in the day is pretty much as scary as it would be at night. So why not have Batman just standing there in Gotham City? And it's just such an iconic moment, and one of those that you rarely get to see. Number 2, and this one is spoilers, so maybe you want to skip ahead to the next bit, but I'm going with the Joker going after Jim Gordon's family yet again. Like, just leave the man alone for a bit. I remember the first time I was reading this event, I was really enjoying it as it was going along. I was speeding through issues, but in the back of my head I was wondering, how's this gonna end? Are they just gonna open the gates again, everything will go back to normal, and it will be like this entire thing didn't exist? And in all honesty, I was worried that was gonna happen because they couldn't keep Gotham closed forever. But what they did instead was completely derail Jim Gordon's life so that he'd never be the same again. And yeah, if you read enough of these events, you'll feel like nothing's really important unless the multiverse has completely changed. But the Joker killing Sarah Gordon feels like the most important thing in the world at that moment. And as well, it just gave us one of the greatest confrontations that I feel has ever happened in DC Comics. But just seeing Jim Gordon push beyond his limit and faced in a situation that he never wanted to be in, at the end of this very horrific year of his life that's already tested him in ways that he could never imagine, and question his moral code and seeing if he's willing to break it or seeing if he could stay true to what he believes in. All of this is just phenomenal, and I love the action that he took in just shooting the Joker in his kneecaps, which is quite poetic when you think about it, and then the Joker still decides to rub that in his face because he was the one that paralysed Barbara. It just meant that this ended with a phenomenal climax, and I also just love the moment it gave us after, where Batman goes to try and reveal his identity. But it did mean that No Man's Land sprinted its way to the finish line instead of limping along it, and solidified its greatness. Time for an honourable mention, because I feel like one should be okay in a top 10 video, and I think I'd go with the fact that the DC universe was involved, but it never took over, despite the fact that some of the other characters probably could have very easily solved what was going on. But you did get cameo appearances from Superman and the rest of the Justice League, to give you that sense that the world does recognise that this is happening in Gotham, but at the same time it's very much a Bat family event. And especially considering how many issues are already involved in this, it could have been very easy to just include Wonder Woman or maybe Green Arrow. Actually, why am I listing characters? Because I'm not sure who was dead at the time. But my point is that Batman No Man's Land knew exactly what it wanted to be, who it wanted to focus on, and at the same time, because of that, that is why it's the greatest DC event. And number 1, the reason why I feel like Batman No Man's Land is just the best is because of how long it went on for, and it never felt like a slog. Like, be honest, think about how many issues are involved in this on some of the biggest titles that DC was printing, and it went on for an entire year. They paused pretty much every Batman book and every Bat family book to tell this story. There are so many different ways that this could have failed, but I think because the writing in it is so good, people forget about that. And the craziest thing is that this went on for a whole year, and by the end of it, it still felt like it could have gone on for longer. I kind of wish we get some kind of Elseworld series where the No Man's Land was never revoked, and we get to see how much further Gotham would have developed. Although if I'm being honest, somebody would have destroyed it eventually. But just think about it, because some events might be 7 or 12 issues long and still can't stay as focused as this did. The fact that DC didn't get cold feet and just abandon this is also just really impressive, and I think that, along with the fact that the creators were really just allowed to tell the story they wanted, is the reason why this is such a phenomenal event. I can't imagine there being another series like this that manages to pull it off as well, and also just go on for as long and still be so consistent. And I can't think of any other event where I wouldn't want to skip at least one of the tie-ins. So yeah, maybe I'm biased, maybe it's nostalgia, maybe I just really wanted to do a positive video with these 10 things, and yeah, it's 10. I definitely didn't cheat this time, didn't prove it already. It should go without saying that I think that Batman No Man's Land is just the best. But that's the video, hopefully you enjoyed it. Like I said, I just wanted to do something to get some positive energy going. But until next time, just make sure that you stay safe and stay mad, all you dogs. Woof woof. See you at the next video.